And welcome to another edition of Madden and Benz Unfiltered with both Mark Madden and me, Tim Benz, in various locations today. I'm at the Trib Live hunting cabin out in Ligonier, right near St. Vincent College in Latrobe for Steelers training camp. Mark is at a hotel. Where, Mark? In Akron? Is that right?
No, Tim, I'm being interrogated in a North Vietnamese prison camp under a bare light bulb, as if you can't tell by the lighting. So
you're going to play Russian roulette after Madden and Benz Unfiltered is over? Is that it?
Oh, I'd have done that by now. So I'm in Akron to see the Sammy Hagar Van Halen experience.
We'll talk about that a little bit. Altered Genius Brewing Company. Try their brilliantly crafted brews. Enjoy their full kitchen at their brewery in Ambridge. They're sponsoring us today. You can also find them at their Trailside Tap Room on the Montour Trail. Treat yourself at Altered Genius Brewing Company and tell them I sent you for a free small pour in the house. Also brought to you by the Barber School of Pittsburgh, locations on Banksville Road and in Monroeville. Day and night classes available. Enrolling now at bsp.edu. Barber School, yes. Google Barber School of Pittsburgh, bsp.edu. I'm here because the Steelers had training camp yesterday. Had one of our shows on Fox Sports Pittsburgh AM 970. Afterwards, Mark and I did the podcast from here last night. And they've got an off day today before starting week 2 of training camp, Mark, where the pads go on. And maybe we see Russell Wilson if there are no more blocking sled incidents.
I was just watching ESPN a moment ago. You know what the headline was, Tim?
Steelers training
Doug
camp
Wilson's
controversy?
Injury open door for Fields.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know if he stays out long enough, maybe it does. I don't see that. I think that would cause great commotion in the Russell Wilson camp because I think he was promised certain things just to sign with the Steelers for the amount he's taken, although don't cry for him, Argentina. He's getting all that money still from Denver. But yeah, one of the dumbest episodes in Steeler history. It stands out even above some of the other stupid things the Steelers have done lately, like trade Deontay Johnson with no plan B, a wide receiver, making a 35-year-old quarterback, heck, any quarterback, have to push a blocking sled. I'd love to know what the gain is. I'd love to know why they thought that was a good idea.
Well, former college coach as their strength and conditioning coach, although even I've talked to some college coaches who are surprised that a quarterback was pushing a sled. And Mark, I don't know if you agree with me on this or not, but it's my opinion that, if Russell Wilson is presented with this as a member of the Seahawks late in his career there, or even in Denver, it's something he balks at. But because he's trying to shed himself of the reputation as a guy who separates himself from the team and kind of looks at himself as his own corporate entity, he wanted to be one of the guys who was going to do anything and everything that they asked of him for the sake of repairing that image. Am I right on that?
That's right. He's not running for president. He's running for quarterback. He's running for team leader. So if he had a brain in his head, though, a lick of sense, Tim, he would have said, no, I ran into Ben Roethlisberger at the Liverpool game Friday night, and it was a casual conversation, so I'm not going to quote word for word what he said, but I feel very confident in saying that Ben would have declined to push the blocking sled.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of phrasing it. Declining to push the sled might be a very diplomatic way of saying how it really would have went down.
Exactamundo. So just nobody here cover themselves in intelligence. Tomlin's a nitwit, the strength coach is a nitwit, and Russ should know better.
I think in watching Fields, and actually you brought up the Deontay Johnson thing, in watching the wide receivers who are vying for the other starting role alongside of George Pickens, they have both been completely as advertised. Like the group of wide receivers in Fields, they are who we thought they were going to be. Fields throws his best pass of the day, followed by his worst pass of the day, followed by his best pass and his second worst pass. Like, that's just how it goes with him. And when he gets out and runs, it looks great. But that's nothing that I want to see for 17 games as a starter this year or next.
No, not only that, when he gets out and runs, he's doing it right now without pads. And when they do put pads on, nobody's going to tackle him. So how do you really know?
And the wide receivers, no one's been bad. It's not like I look at any of these guys and say, well, they're not NFL players. They're a fish out of water. But I also don't look at any of them and say, yeah, I want to see that guy starting opposite George Pickens and getting 95% of the snaps.
I'm not even sure what we are going to get from Pickens. He's already fighting with the receivers coach. I don't think he can handle the burden of being the number one receiver Not in terms of the coverage and probably not mentally either.
Now, as far as Pickens goes, I want to follow that up a little bit because I tend to agree, Mark. I got to see him be a number one before I believe he's going to be a number one. Like, if you look at
Jim, put it bluntly, he's just a dipstick. You know what I mean? He's just nuts. I mean, he's going to wash out in the long run. Not this year, although it'll start this year. Heck, it's already started, but he's going to wash out.
You know, I saw the incident that people are talking about. It happened right in front of me. It happened right in front of where the media was standing. He missed a block, and his coach got on him for missing a block. And it wasn't just the coach. The entire offense just went, whoa, they knew what happened. The play got blown up because he missed a block. And if he's going to be on the field so much in an Arthur Smith run system that involves everybody having to block all the time, then he's got to be better at it, whether he wants to be or not. So if he's coached hard, he better get used to it.
Well, Oppenheimer will figure it out. He'll know exactly what to do.
And the other thing about the run game, always relying on that is, well, then if you're going to be so reliant on the run game, it's interesting to me that they didn't pick up Najee Harris's offense or a fifth-year option to keep him so involved in the offense.
It's not interesting to me, Tim. They don't know what they're doing. This period in Steelers history will be remembered as the time they didn't know what they were doing. And yet the guys who get to not know what they're doing get to keep doing it indefinitely.
All right, so we want to hear from you, Steelers fans. Comment on what you think you've seen.
We got this one dipstick over here already saying thank you for a daily dose of negativity. Tim, am I allowed to give the finger on the video here?
Well, we could go like this and sort of figure it out.
I'm not going to do it at all then. But I mean, what do you want me to say? That Fields is a genius? That the coach really is Oppenheimer? That it's right to have Russ Wilson push the blocking sled? And they're going to go 9-8, 8-9. It's going to go exactly like I'm telling you.
Well,
so
Mark,
you want me to lie? And you know what? If you want me to lie, there's no shortage of Steeler stooge media who are out there lying every day. Why don't you go check out what they're saying?
Well, that's part of
they're not popular enough to do all the media things I do.
Well, that's part of the issue as it relates to this story that came out this week about the NFLPA trying to get the media banned from locker rooms in the next CBA as sort of a bargaining chip to get an 18th game. Part of the reason why they can get away with that, Mark, now is that people are so reliant on news that they just want to hear, the fan sites, the team sites.
Well, and shows like Pat McAfee's that just want to be friends with the athletes. Hey, Pat laughs and jokes and they have a good time and everybody's great. Why can't everyone do that? Well, because it obscures the truth.
I just want to warn fans and frankly warn the NFLPA that if they do cash this chip in and get the media banned from the locker rooms, hey, be ready for what you're asking for. Because, you know, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier for the media to be even tougher on the players if they're not in the locker rooms and don't have to meet them face to face, A. And B, if you're a fan, you're never going to get any unvarnished news. You're just
what was the point being made that the athletes don't want to talk to the media while they're naked?
Right, yes,
Which,
exactly.
Of course, makes me suppress the story from a couple years back that would have got one Steeler in a lot of trouble. But I still refrain from that. But yeah, it's not because of that, Tim. It's because they don't want to talk to us, period. That's what it is.
Yeah, and they have their own ways of getting their own message out, but this is
that's okay, because I don't want to talk to them. I'm perfectly content.
You know, I'll warn the teams, too, that if it goes down like that and we don't have the opportunity to talk to these guys in person and get stories, then it turns into back channeling it, going through the agents, calling the players on their own, and it's even less controlled than the teams want it to be now. The harder you squeeze something, Mark, it's always the case. The harder you squeeze something, the more sand comes through your fingers. And that's what the NFLPA and the NFL are talking about doing. And the NFL will gladly do this because what does it cost them? Nothing. They're still going to get coverage, and they don't have to give up anything to get an 18th game if this is really something that the NFLPA is this fixated on.
And I would think Robert Plant would say that includes his lemon till the juice runs down his leg.
Well, let's get back to on-the-field stuff and get back to some Steelers stuff. And you brought up the Deontay Johnson thing. I actually think, Mark, if there is something positive to say from training camp, the new defensive backs have been better than I expected. Elliott.
No, hold on. I thought about that because you mentioned that on the podcast, and you would know better because you're seeing them. Okay. And by the way, just one other quick note about talking to the athletes. I often thought one of the best radio sports talk shows ever was Tony Kornheiser's, because he pointedly refused to have athletes or coaches on, so he was never beholden. He just talked to other media figures. But in terms of the DBs being better than we thought, they're covering the Steelers receivers, Tim.
Well, that's true, but I didn't think Dante Jackson would be able to cover George Pickens, and he's done that frequently.
That makes me worry about George Pickens.
Well, there's always that yin and yang when you're watching your own team practice against itself. Like one's going to look good, so the other's going to look bad. But my expectations for George Pickens are high. I didn't have much for Jackson. He's handled himself well, and I think Elliott might be an improvement if he's on the field more than some of their other options have been at safety.
Oh, I actually think Elliott, I like that signing when they done it. But in terms of, the big thing with the Steelers is if one guy at a certain position gets hurt, they're really screwed. And that includes safety, cornerback, and wide receiver.
And tight end, because I know you're not a huge fan of
No, I think they're screwed already there.
I know you're not a big fan of Freiermuth, but with the ball going to the tight ends as often as it is, if something were to happen to him, and he's had an injury track record, they're in trouble when it comes to the pass.
The ball
game.
going to the tight end as often as we think it will.
As it's portrayed.
I want to see all this executed.
Sure,
yeah. He ain't got Derrick Henry. In Tennessee, he had Derrick Henry. In Atlanta, he had, what's the guy's name, Bijan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he ain't got neither of them here. And a lot of Oppenheimer's offense trickles down from what the quality of the running back provides.
Well, it's a good point you bring up, because it's funny in looking at what Arthur Smith has gotten. Like, for instance, Algier down in Atlanta. He got more out of him, but not as much as people expected out of Bijan Robinson. If you look at the tight ends, he got more out of Jonnu Smith than anybody ever expected, but not enough out of Kyle Pitts. So he gets a lot out of the second-level guys, but not what people would expect to yield out of the top-level guys, unless that guy's name is Derrick Henry or A.J. Brown for a year.
Well, right, and he doesn't have them here.
Right. All right, so let's get to the Pirates, and who's not coming to the Pirates? It sounds like anybody at the trade deadline. Ben Cherington said, here's his quote here, "My experience has been if you keep at it, keep working at some point you'll find the proper deal. We trust ourselves to do that." He says that he's gotten a no from another team on some things, and he's also been told no when they've tried to make a deal. So what do we believe here, Mark? How active has he really tried to be?
I think he's trying to trade all our bad players for all their good players. I don't know. The Padres and was it the Cardinals already added somebody? I know the Padres did. Nobody major, but at least they're doing something. And I just think I bet they trade Chapman and bring in somebody cheaper than Chapman and cut payroll. If they cut payroll at the deadline, people should be going crazy, and they won't.
I think you're talking about Paredes going to the Cubs. Is that what you're thinking about? The guy from
I don't know. Nobody major yet, and the Pirates need somebody major.
Yeah, and Chisholm, apparently a lot of people thought that he was very much in the mix of the Pirates. There's some people saying that.
What's his first name?
Jazz.
Oh, Jazz. Oh, okay.
Yeah. He goes to New York.
I thought it was, Jazz.
He goes to New York, and I know a lot of people thought the Pirates were really in the mix. I'm just getting a lot of old Neil Huntington vibes this week, Mark, when it comes to the trade deadline with the Pirates. Oh, we were right there to the end, but somebody offered way more than we were willing to offer, and we feel prudent by not going too far. Well, quite frankly, they should have gone further already because they need more help than any of these other teams in the NL wildcard mix.
I would love to go to Paul Skeens after the trade deadline and say, okay, what do you think? Did they do enough? How do you feel? And see what he says. Right.
Yes. And see if you can get an unvarnished real answer. Just do it.
I would like to ask him while he's naked.
See, this in a hockey locker room, that's never going to be a problem because they change in a different area.
Right.
In baseball.
They have an equipment room and a changing room.
Right. And in baseball, it's 50-50. Football, you can't do that because there's 53 guys in a locker room. You can't have two different locker rooms.
Well, you could.
You could if they wanted to let the Steelers use Pitt's locker room and Pitt wanted to use the Steelers.
I know, Tim. There's plenty of extra space in those stadiums. They could do it.
Well, yeah, and I guess if they're going to get a new stadium, or a lot of these teams now are getting new stadiums, or going through the 30, 35-year cycle, they could
do it now, Tim. The concourse at Acrisure is huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess you could. You could retrofit it.
I don't want it to escape from sight why they're doing this. So they don't have to talk to us at all.
Yeah, and that goes back to J.C. Treader. He didn't even want the media back in after COVID.
And you know what will be great about that, Tim? It'll be great if they don't talk to us at all, and you have to kind of arrange stuff like that yourself. Let's see how many of these media guys, especially the local, who thinks the athletes are their buddies, let's see who their buddies really are.
Yeah, they'll call them back on time, live for an interview on the radio or something like that. It's a lot more difficult to navigate if the team isn't prodding it. But then again, the team doesn't get to filter it either. You know, the
Pat thing's getting ridiculous. And I know people think I'm too hard on him and that I'm a spurned lover because I'm not on the show anymore. I wouldn't want to be on that show. Scotty Scheffler, when he got arrested, Pat had the media guy on who, was there on the scene and reported on it, who happened to be there. I forget the guy's name. He's pretty prominent. And Pat was chastising him for making a big deal out of it, for reporting it.
Like it shouldn't have been reported? I mean, like that was the biggest
story of the event. Yeah.
Yeah, that's, it's not our job to be these guys' public relations agents. And I think
it's Pat's.
And the way
Pat McAfee pays Aaron Rodgers $1 million to be his PR guy. That just isn't good business.
Hey, by the way, since we haven't talked about this, but since you just brought it up with Aaron Rodgers, did you see that ESPN list of like the top 25 football players this century? Rodgers was ninth.
I couldn't believe Ben wasn't on it.
Yeah, Rodgers was ninth, and Ben wasn't there at all. If you want to build a case that there are 25 football players better than Roethlisberger since 2000, I guess I could listen to it, but I can't see.
Well, they put Travis Kelce on there because he's dating Lucille Ball. I mean, he ain't one of the top 25. I mean, if it wasn't for Mahomes, nobody would know who Travis Kelce is. He'd be a gym teacher.
Lucille Ball is quite the analogy for Taylor Swift. Where'd you get that one?
Is that what I said? I'm sorry. I meant Richie Cunningham. I don't know. I can't come up with another redhead.
All right, let's. I forgot to ask you about Liverpool.
Seriously, who's another redhead? That's a tough one.
Redheaded singer?
Redheaded anybody.
Who's the lead singer from T'Pau? Now I'm going back away.
Yeah, nobody knows who that is, Tim. So let's go. Keep going.
Lita Ford was a blonde, right? She was a natural blonde? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right, hold on. Chris, our producer, says Carrot Top. I don't think you meant that either.
I did not mean it.
What'd you think of the Liverpool game, Mark? How'd that go over at Acrisure?
I was good. I mean, 41,000. It's only a friendly, but, we saw enough. Two starters, Mo Salah and Dominic Szoboszlai, a bunch of regulars like Curtis Jones, who went off hurt, unfortunately. The big development for Liverpool fans is that Stefan Bajcetic, who's a defensive midfielder. He's a kid. I think he's only 20 now. He impressed a couple years ago when he got a bunch of games, but he was hurt all of last year. So he put in, I think it was 30 minutes and looked pretty good. So that, from a news standpoint, was probably the biggest thing on our side of the street. But as a spectacle, it was very good. I like, seeing all the Liverpool fans there, the sea of red, although they kind of lost me when they did the wave.
How are the side angles, the lines and all that for football there? I mean, I know we got our own football stadium for soccer. We've got our own soccer stadium.
But funny you mention that. You know how the field has to be extended width-wise for soccer?
I didn't know that, but okay.
Yeah, football's narrow where it has to be extended. And they did it. They had room to do it. But in the press box, if you were in the front row of the press box, the near sideline got cut off.
Oh, you had to look down like that?
Yeah, it's perfect for NFL football, but not for the real football.
No, I could see how, I sit in the front row for football games, NFL games, and I could see what you're talking about. If they had to push it all the way back towards the fans, towards the stands, you'd have to sort of bend down and look down to see it.
Yeah, it was no big deal. It literally cut off, like a couple of yards, but it was still kind of weird.
All right, let's get some comments. Eric asked...
Like Tim, disembodied heads were taking the throw-ins.
Eric says, time to start worrying about Colin Holderman, or is it just a rough patch? He adds, all the injuries notwithstanding, this team was never going to make the wild card. Well, let's start with Holderman first. I don't know if this is just a rough patch, or maybe it's better said that he had his best patch already. I think maybe you might have seen the best of him to this point as it is.
I think he's just Colin Holderman, Tim. I don't think he's Wally Fingers or Dennis Eckersley. I think he's done pretty well. I think he's a decent, seventh inning guy. And I'm not going to blame him for, the fact that they're treading sludge. And this guy's right. They were never going to make the playoffs as assembled without getting help, significant help.
Right. And if you look at the injuries, yes, they have impacted them. It's part of the reason why, Mark, I think it might be wise. I get why they're doing what they're doing, especially with Jones
Well, not
out.
Nick Gonzalez, too.
Yeah, Nick Gonzalez going out really hurts because he's one of the few guys that was decent with runners in scoring position and tended to do his better hitting when guys were on base. But, you know, again, if they were serious about this year, with the injuries being what they are, they wouldn't be in the 6-man rotation thing. They get out of that and make sure that they get Keller and Skeens on the bump as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, they won yesterday with Keller pitching, but kind of wasted his start. The way he pitched, it should have been a lot easier than it turned out to be. Although I do think that loss, I don't want to say saved their season because, that win. I don't want to say saved their season because that would imply I think they can make it, but it kept the dream alive for better or worse. But now these guys, it's so long between starts, you forgot the last time they pitched. It's just, it's like, are they on a 7-man rotation, 8? Are they going to start once a month? What's the deal?
Yeah, exactly, Mark. Like, how long ago does that near complete game for Skeens feel? Because that was his last outing.
Let me tell you what a turning point was, Tim. An odd kind of turning point. When they sold out all the Philadelphia games, getting a lot of Philly fans, but they sold them out, and why ask why, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then drew big crowds for 2 of the 3 St. Louis games. Then it became, okay, we've done enough to draw fans that will probably keep up for at least another month. So we don't need to get anybody. We don't need to be better to draw big crowds. And that's all this is ever about. All it ever has been about is getting as much money as possible.
The fact that their starting pitching is as good as it has been all year has managed to keep them from having prolonged losing streaks, but the inability to bolster the offense has also prevented them from ever getting really hot and extended a winning streak. That 6-game run that they went on, the 8 of 9 that they went on is as good as it's going to get potentially unless they better the lineup. And it's not just one guy who's going to do that. They probably need 2 guys if they were to really be real about it. And that would
more than that, given the injuries. I mean, we don't know how long Gonzalez is going to be out. For that matter, we're still not sure about Jared Jones on the pitching side.
Yeah, exactly. Richard says Fields is an excellent athlete, but as a pocket passer, he leaves a lot to be desired.
No.
As for Pickens, it's a near guarantee that he will have a major blow up this season, and you can see it brewing. It's already percolated a few times over, whether that's been on social media once or twice or on the sidelines 3 or 4 times since he's become a Steeler. The target issue is going to be certainly less this year because the ball isn't going to go anywhere else. But as you phrased it, Mark, the more he is cognizant of that, the more he realizes that it might become an even bigger problem for the Steelers.
Tim, you could take the Steelers. And if you work for The Athletic, in fact, you would do this because all they have is lists. You could make a list of 10 things that could blow up in their face this year, and all would be a distinct possibility. How many legitimate playoff teams do you think have a list that lengthy?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And okay, I'll go to this guy, Frank, who wanted to challenge the guy who called you out for being too negative. He says, well, I guess FanDuel is also negative because they got the Steelers win total at 8.5 games. And that's true. I mean, for as much national fluff that comes out about the Steelers every year, anytime you look at a betting site, and this goes back to last year too, the number is right at about 8.5 because people look at the holes in this team. And do you really feel as confident in them being a 10-win team as you do maybe a 7-win team?
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to, if the season started, I always make my prediction, as you're aware, the Friday before the season, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I would say, I always say a record and then leaning toward backward or forward. You know what I mean? And right now, I would predict 9-8, leaning toward 8-9.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And part of that is the schedule in the division. Cleveland's loaded, Tim. We talk about Cincy and Baltimore. Cleveland's loaded. If you trust Deshaun Watson even a little bit to finally bounce back from all the massage stuff, they could win the division. The Browns have more potential to win the division than the Steelers do, by far.
The ceiling is higher, I think, for all 3 teams in the North before the Steelers. I think if they get the quarterback play from those three quarterbacks and the health of those three quarterbacks, the Steelers are behind them. This one comes, the follow-up from Richard is, for the Pirates, it's business as usual. Do nothing to very little at most and bank on hope in the future. Well, the operative word in that sentence is bank, because they sell the future all the time. All the time.
Well, you know what's going to happen, Tim? They're going to be a team that misses the playoffs now for the 9th straight year, and they will get an attendance of 2 million, and that's incredible.
Sean says training camp had become a spot to be seen by A-listers. We had Smokey Robinson this past week. When was it to be seen by A-listers?
Not only that, I'm not sure Smokey's an A-lister right this second. What is it, the 40s? I mean, did he get his picture taken with Bullet Bill Dudley?
Ralph says when it comes to the media analysis, at least you two guys ask tough questions.
I don't. I'm never there. It never will be.
It's not even so much about asking tough questions as it is being willing to advance unpopular opinions. That's what it's really about.
Let me tell you, I respect the guys who go to the Tomlin press conference because they have to be there. I feel insulted by his very existence. It's everything that comes out of his mouth is horse manure, and he is constantly combative with the media. Constantly.
Locally, especially, yes.
Oh, right, because he kisses Jay Glazer's ass and every ex-player's ass. Because you know what those ex-players did that he never did, Tim? Played in the league.
Before we go, Mark, the concert tonight, you're seeing what this is Sammy Hagar's Van Halen experience sort of thing? Is that what it is?
It's like, well, it's weird, Tim. He has this band called The Circle, which has Bonham's Kid on drums and Michael Anthony, right? And he has replaced the guitar player, Vic Johnson, with Joe Satriani, who's kind of a Eddie Van Halen sound-alike. And he is, playing the Van Halen hits. But I thought he was going to play a lot of Roth hits and have, Michael Anthony sing them or he'd sing them himself. But he's only playing 3, which is about what they played when it was Van Hagar. And Statch, I guess, sounds a little more like Eddie than Vic Johnson, but really it's just the Sammy Hagar concert, and that's fine by me. But he's doing like I Can't Drive 55, Only One Way to Rock. To be fair, Van Halen played those when Sammy was in it. So it's just the Sammy Hagar concert, but I like those too.
What was your favorite Hagar Van Halen album? OU812 or Four Unlawful?
Probably the first one, probably 5150. Only because the memories are good because they proved they could still do it right away.
Yeah, 5150 was a great track. I love 5150.
See, which kind of fueled them for stupidity later because the brothers thought they could do it a third time with Gary Sharon and they couldn't.
Yeah, right.
Like Sammy was a star in his own right. Sharon was an extreme, but it wasn't the same. I thought Sammy actually took a chance joining Van Halen because he could have gone in a bad direction. Like his career could have gone south because he had the proven commodity, Van Halen, who knew what was going to happen.
Mark, on Saturday or Sunday, you're going to see Liverpool again in Columbia, South Carolina.
Saturday, Liverpool against Man United, yeah.
Is that going to feel a little bit more intense to you than Real Betis coming to Pittsburgh just because it's Man United?
A little bit because of Jersey versus Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't think any of our guys are going to I don't think we'll have many of our guys having rejoined the team after the Euros and Copa, and I don't think them either. I saw Diogo Jota from the Portuguese team had come over. I don't know if he's going to play. Andrew Robertson, too, from Scotland. But I don't know if they're going to get in there. But it's just fun. It's just, honestly, it's just a summer distraction before I have to talk about the Steelers all the time.
Now,
if I'm doing that.
Are the Liverpool fans going to dress up in the little black dresses, the female Liverpool fans, like they do in Columbia for the SEC games?
I have no idea what you're talking about, so I'm guessing no.
Well, what were you saying when you were doing the show from Aldean's? Were you able to find attractive Pittsburgh Liverpool fans before the gates opened? Because I know there was a struggle.
I have no comment.
That's a tradition down in Columbia. All the girls, I think the sorority girls, go to the game in little black dresses. So I was wondering.
And I bet not a lot of them look so great.
Mark will be back with a full report next week on Madden and Benz Unfiltered. I'll be in for Mark on Friday. Tom's in today. Mark, enjoy the show. We'll catch up with you next week.
Okay, wait.
Earthquake.
I'll see you.
This is Madden and Benz Unfiltered, brought to you by the Barber School of Pittsburgh and Ultra Genius Brewing Company.